By definition, the Mojave Desert is an arid rain shadow and the driest place in North America. It ranges in elevation from over 11,000 feet in the Spring Mountains to 282 feet below sea level in Death Valley. Through this seemingly barren land, a mainline railroad charts its course connecting Las Vegas with the rich ports of Southern California. This is Union Pacific's Cima Subdivision. Covering the southern portion of the Los Angeles and Salt Lake Railroad, the Cima Subdivision runs for 173 miles between Yermo, California and Las Vegas, Nevada. Various intermodal trains travel the line, along with mixed manifests, rack trains, coal, and ethanol. Highlights of the route include the scenic Afton Canyon, the oasis at Kelso, the stiff grade over Cima Hill, and the lights of Las Vegas. Join us now for Union Pacific's Cima Subdivision. Completed in 1905, the Los Angeles and Salt Lake route did just what the name suggests, link Salt Lake City with Santa Fe's line over Cajon Pass into Los Angeles and the busy seaports. The Cima Sub covers the southern portion of the railroad between Las Vegas and Yermo. Our tour actually begins at Daggett, UP's junction with the Santa Fe Transcon. The first 3 miles of track are part of Union Pacific's Los Angeles Sub, which utilizes the BNSF between Daggett and West Riverside via a trackage rights agreement going back to 1905. Station Yermo is milepost 162 and the start of the Cima Sub. From here, the track travels in a northeast direction paralleling I-15 through Toomey, Mannix, Field, and Dunn. At this point, the grade turns to the southeast following the Mojave River through the spectacular setting of Afton Canyon. It crosses the river 3 times on through truss bridges, making it a popular location for railfan photographers. East of the canyon, the rails drop through the Mojave Sink at Basin and Crucero, reaching the lowest point on the subdivision at 968 feet. Entering the Mojave National Preserve, the rails begin a 1% climb through mulch, sands, and kerns. At Kelso, the grade stiffens to 2.2% as trains begin to climb the infamous Cima grade. Continuing on a more northerly heading, trains pass the sidings of Hayden, Dawes, Elora, and Chase before arriving at the summit of Cima, elevation 4,207 feet. The highest on the subdivision. The grade on the east side of Cima Hill is more gentle at around 1% as the railroad skirts the southeastern edge of the Ivanpah Valley through Joshua, Brant, Ivanpah, Moore, and Nipton, the last siding in the state of California. Crossing into Nevada, the rails continue compass north through Caleta, Borax, and Jean, climbing another 1% grade to Erie, milepost 310. It is near this location that the last spike was driven on the LA and SL line, and a trackside marker notes the exact spot. The rails drop down a final 1% grade through Sloan and Arden Yard before arriving at Las Vegas, milepost 334.3. It's just after 6 a.m. at Daggett, California. Beyond the signal bridge, A giant steady lunar sinks toward the western horizon, orbiting the Earth at over 2,000 miles per hour. As it slips beyond the artificial lights of nearby Barstow, another object approaches us in the twilight, and eastbound. This is nothing unusual. Nearly 100 trains per day pass this busy junction on BNSF's Needle Subdivision, but as the crossing gates activate, we know we have our first train of the day entering Union Pacific's route to Salt Lake City. CSX 5101 and 5231 lead an early morning military train to the nearby U.S. Marine Corps logistics base at Yermo. Ground combat and support equipment of all kinds are maintained and repaired at this facility, and trains like this are common here. The logistics base is the second largest employer in the Barstow area, behind nearby Fort Irwin. The third largest employer is BNSF, with its huge classification yard just west of here. Daggett began life in the 1880s, when silver was discovered near Calico to the north. Southern Pacific built a main line through here in 1882, which is today's BNSF Transcon. It was named Calico Junction, but to avoid confusion with the nearby mining community of Calico, the name was changed to honor the Lieutenant Governor of California at the time, John Daggett. Borax was important to Daggett's economy, and for 2 years, it was the terminal for the famous 20-mule team run from Death Valley. On Main Street, the century-old Desert Market was the first fireproof structure built in the Mojave Desert after the original one was destroyed by fire in 1908. The Union Pacific line dates back to 1905 with the building of the San Pedro, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake, a railroad that UP's Edward Harriman originally opposed. While westbound BNSF double stacks head for a Barstow crew change, UP 8653 West heads through the junction with a fresh crew from Yermo. The UP enters the BNSF on trackage rights dating back to 1905, thanks to William Andrews Clark. Clark negotiated with the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe to gain access over Cajon Pass, giving his Salt Lake City route the access it needed for success. The LA&SL operated independently until 1921, when Union Pacific bought Clark's half share of the railroad. The corporation continued to exist on paper until January 1st, 1988, and today is just another part of UP's vast 32,000-mile system covering the western two-thirds of the United States. UP 5769 works via remote control as the DPU on the westbound manifest bound for Colton Yard. If you enjoy heavy trains and lots of them, then Daggett is the place for you. Just west of the junction yields a view of every train going into and out of Barstow. During the Christmas season, that can equate to over 100 trains in a 24-hour period, and that's just BNSF. UP's modest 12 trains in the same time frame may not seem like much, but it does add to the variety at Daggett. The parade of black diamonds meets BNSF 7148 East on the point of domestic stacks. Which in turn meets BNSF 6722, westbound for San Bernardino. Yermo comes from the Spanish word meaning wilderness. This small community at the base of the Calico Mountains was founded in 1902 and given the name Otis. It became a division point on the Union Pacific and still is today. The 3 miles of track between Yermo and Daggett is the eastern portion of UP's Los Angeles Subdivision. Trains heading east to Las Vegas travel the Cima Sub. Yermo serves as a crew change point and staging yard for westbound coal trains out of Utah. A mixture of coal, intermodal, and mixed manifest trains make up the majority of traffic one can find on the Cima Sub. The first 6.7 miles of the subdivision operate as a double-track mainline between Yermo, milepost 162, and Toomey at 168.7. UP 8370 East leads a ballast train out of the yard. Track work is going on near Kelso on the west side of Cima Hill, and the new ballast will be needed there. The 2 EMDs throttle up as the train departs on Main 2. The ballast train departs Yermo on a slight downhill grade. The track speed is 40 for the next few miles, but will soon increase to 70 as it heads toward Afton Canyon. The Newberry Mountains frame the skyline far to the south. Somewhere, hidden in their flanks, is the busy BNSF Needle Subdivision. The high traffic demands of World War II brought CTC to the railroad from Cima to Yermo by 1943. Today, the old telegraph poles lie in a heap, replaced by digital data sent wirelessly or through the rail itself. The Cima Sub was cut over to positive train control in 2017, and crews were busy cutting down the old poles east of Yermo during our visit. After exiting Afton Canyon, UP 8605 West passes the doomed poles at milepost 172. This train originated in North Platte, Nebraska, and is bound for West Colton Yard. It gets a flashing yellow from an intermediate signal east of Toomey. A few miles to the east, UP 7213 brings a westbound coal train past milepost 176. Cave Mountain rises behind the train, a landmark to the north of Afton Canyon. As the coal train races the afternoon sun to Yermo, it's time for us to continue east and enter Afton Canyon. Entering the west end of Afton Canyon, a block signal shows a clear for a surprise move, BNSF 7329 West. The Vancouver, Washington to Barstow Manifest is a rare reroute through Salt Lake City due to a track work window in the Tehachapi Mountains. We were told that its northbound counterpart also used this track, but we never came across it during our week of filming on the Cima Sub. This is a popular railfan location known as Dunn Overlook. The actual station of Dunn is to the west. It includes a 9,529-foot siding and a sand and gravel mill. UP 8351 leads a morning LA to Denver Z train through Dunn as the rails begin to pull away from Interstate 15, leading to the more remote portions of the line. The Cima Subdivision generally follows the course of the Mojave River for 40 miles between Yermo and Crucero. The relationship of river and railroad becomes the most intimate within the confines of Afton Canyon. 3 truss bridges take trains over the Mojave. The first, Mojave River 2, is located just west of the Afton Spur at milepost 191.18. UP 5382 leads a vehicle train east. The Caddy Mountains are broken into a series of dry washes, feeding the Mojave River at various points when the rain falls, which isn't too often in this country. The rugged features of the barren land is striking in its own way. The drumming of prime movers brings our attention back to the bridge as UP 7213 is seen one last time crossing the Mojave River with a unit train of Utah coal. although it is less than 8 miles through. Exploring Afton Canyon reminded us somewhat of Ruby Canyon on the Colorado-Utah border. The similarity is lost on the Mojave River, which, unlike the Colorado, flows mostly underground. UP 2635 West takes a short MNPWC over the third crossing just east of Afton. This is near the former location of Tunnel 1, which was daylighted in 1957. It's springtime in the Mojave Desert. In a place that gets less than 10 inches of rain per year, spring still brings a bit of color to the sparse vegetation found here. Afton Canyon is the only place where the Mojave River flows above ground all year, even if it's somewhat hard to find. It may appear as a seep or a wet spot under a bridge, but still, it is a river that must be crossed. UP 7718 heads east with another ballast train at the third crossing. Track speed slows to 40 inside the canyon, and a temporary slow order is in effect near milepost 192.5. The dramatic geological formations found in Afton Canyon have led locals to dub it the Grand Canyon of the Mojave. High up in the colorful cliffs, one can find the remnants of a magnesium mine dating back to 1894. A tramway was added to the cliffside mine at one point to carry ore across the river, where it was loaded onto rail cars. The magnesium was used as a lining in open-hearth steel furnaces around World War I. Gigantic mud towers lined with river rock tower above the canyon floor, beckoning visitors into their cool shadows on hot afternoons. Looking across the Mojave, A West Colton to North Platte manifest carefully passes the slow order near the former station of Cliffside. In the heart of Afton Canyon, Cliffside offers some of the most striking scenery on the entire subdivision. As the afternoon sun dips to the southwest, it pulls shadows out of every rock and every cliff, creating a dramatic setting for trains to run through. Westbound UP 7377 approaches with train ISC-LB, a Salt Lake City to Long Beach intermodal with a combination of international and domestic double stacks for the West Coast. The railroad continues to follow the course of the Mojave River east through Afton Canyon. During our springtime visit, the desert floor was alive with colors thanks to recent rains. Some of the last remaining telegraph poles wait a similar fate to those we saw earlier near Toomey. A distant red indicates a westbound has entered the next block, and soon UP 5254 brings another Salt Lake City to Long Beach intermodal through the canyon. The train disappears behind the magnificent walls of the canyon, and silence again encircles us while the shadows grow long. Turning again to the east, the canyon walls give way to a vast open country on the edge of the Mojave Sink, the lowest portion of the Cima Sub. The next siding is aptly named Basin. As evening approaches and our world slips into the Earth's shadow, we take a break from rail fanning to enjoy the quiet dusk in the desert. The next morning reveals the fourth and final crossing of the Mojave River near milepost 196.9 west of Basin. A westbound KG1CI sporting a UP arrow wedge heads toward Afton Canyon. This train originates at Union Pacific's Global One intermodal facility in Chicago and is bound for California's City of Industry. Later, the morning ZLADV appears out of Afton Canyon and snakes toward the fourth crossing. In the channel of the Mojave, a shot you normally can't do in most rivers. UP 6017 heads west over the 4th crossing. Basin is the first siding encountered east of Afton Canyon. It is 6,196 feet in length and located at milepost 196.3. The east end contains a spur track leading to the remnants of an old trash disposal site, which is now just a memory. Evidence of a long-forgotten railroad grade can be found heading north of Basin. A victim of a long-ago washout, slowly buried by the hands of the desert. The ancient road bed wanders through an abandoned gravel pit. Timbers of loading chutes are well preserved in the dry desert climate, as are hundreds of ties lining the grade between walls of hand-laid stone. The echoes of hard-working man and machine no longer reach the distant cliffs, save the occasional rumble of passing trains. The next several miles leads through some of the loneliest and remote portions of the railroad as the steel rails pass through the heart of the desert. UP 5997 leads another westbound KG1CI through Basin and into Afton Canyon. Rising to the east, the rough features of Old Dad Mountain are flanked by the smooth sand of the Kelso Dunes on the far side of the Mojave Sink. Just north of here, the Mojave River disappears into oblivion near the town of Baker, along the southern end of the Death Valley Geological Depression. Summertime temperatures here regularly exceed 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and the town has erected a large thermometer that can be easily read from nearby Interstate 15. Today, it is quite chilly in Baker at only 84 degrees. To the north, Death Valley is one of the hottest places in the world, and to this day holds the record high of 134 degrees Fahrenheit, set back in 1913. It has the distinction of having the lowest elevation in North America, with Badwater Basin dropping 282 feet below sea level. Rich in both geological features and history, Death Valley is a sight to see if you can stand the heat. Since leaving Daggett, eastbound trains experience a mostly downhill run to Crucero, milepost 202. This desolate section of track represents the lowest spot on the Cima Sub at an elevation of 968 feet above sea level. It may not be as impressive as visiting Death Valley to the north, but this remote desert location isn't one to go exploring without plenty of extra water, a full tank of gas, and a four-wheel drive. Crucero is taken from the Spanish word for crossing and is the site of a ghost town. Looking west toward Basin, a West Colton to North Platte manifest can be seen in the shimmering heat as the train races into the sink. UP 7328, a GE C6044AC, brings up the rear of the train. In the coming miles, its 4,400 horsepower will be called upon for the grueling 2.2% climb over Cima Hill. There isn't much remaining of the ghost town of Crucero. Here, the Tonopah and Tidewater cross the LA and SL on its route between Ludlow and Death Valley. This shot is taken from the old TNT grade. UP 6764 leads two BNSF units on the point of an empty coal drag bound for Utah. As the train leaves Crucero, it enters a corridor of salt cedar planted by the railroad. Several sections of trees are found between here and Kelso at the western foot of the Cima grade. The trees protect the main line from drifting sand as it skirts the Devil's Playground in the Mojave Wilderness and are kept alive thanks to an extensive irrigation system. If your idea of a desert is a place with lots of sand, then this view beyond the trees will fit the bill. Continuing on a compass setting of almost due east, the track dips through a huge sag near Balch. Westbound UP 7834 takes a manifest toward Yermo. The Kelso Dunes are a main attraction to the area and a landmark that can be seen for miles in the desolate country. Because of its routing through the remote desert region and to compete with the Santa Fe's popular Harvey House train stations, the LA&SL constructed elaborate stations of their own in the Spanish Mission Revival style. One such depot can be found at Kelso near milepost 236. Opened in 1924, the Kelso Clubhouse and Restaurant contained a telegraph office, baggage room, dormitory rooms for staff and railroad crews, in addition to a restaurant. During the days of steam, Kelso thrived as a helper base for the steep 2.2% climb over Cima Hill. A nearby mine also brought business to the station as the town's population swelled to over 2,000. Desalination and the closure of the mine eventually led to the depot's closure in 1985. It was nearly torn down. Currently operated by the National Park Service, the building has been restored and reopened to the public. Kelso takes on the appearance of an oasis in the desert, as there is literally nothing for miles in any direction, except passing trains like UP 7270 West. It slowly passes the station, having reached the bottom of the 2,078-foot grade to Cima. The train picks up speed as it continues into the desert toward the remote stations of Kearns and Sands. When the rails arrived in 1905, Kelso was simply called Siding 16. 3 workers threw their names into a hat to pick the official name, and John Kelso was the lucky man. Returning to the depot after dark, a nighttime westbound manifest eases past on the main. The train slows to a crawl after the new positive train control system put it into suppression for no apparent reason. After talking to the dispatcher and PTC desk over the radio, the crew obtained permission to operate the train conventionally without PTC for the remainder of their run to Yermo. During our visit, we encountered 3 trains in a row that experienced the same problem, as bugs were still being worked out of the new system. A high green shows at the east end of Kelso, control point C237. UP 2532 leads an eastbound manifest past the station and water tanks as it begins the heavy climb up Cima Hill. As the train rolls through the east switch of Kelso, it begins to slow, feeling the effect of the 2.2% mountain grade. UP 8830 and EMD SD70 Ace is already working hard on the rear of the train. When compared with mountain grades like Donner, Tehachapi, or even Soldier Summit, Cima Hill looks tame. Lacking in tight curves, cuts, fills, trestles, and tunnels, this unassuming climb east of Kelso has a history with runaway trains, something every railroader is fully aware of. UP 4637 has lost its dynamic brakes, forcing the conductor to set retainers on the long string of auto racks at Cima. With brakes squealing, the train slowly makes the descent to Kelso. Dawes was one of 2 sidings where LA and SL crews were required to stop, cool their wheels, and inspect their train on the downhill run to Kelso. Newer technology such as dynamic brakes eventually eliminated this requirement. In November of 1980, a Union Pacific tie train with inoperative dynamic brakes ran away here, slamming into the rear of a westbound autorack train below Kelso at an estimated speed of 118 miles per hour. Retainers were also set on that train. However, the car's brakes were not operating properly, rendering them useless. The engineer and head-end brakeman of the tie train were killed in the incident, along with the conductor in the caboose of the vehicle train. Its rear-end brakeman was seriously injured as well. In the end, it was the railroad, not the crew, that was to blame, and today, stricter safety measures are in place to hopefully reduce the likelihood of it ever happening again. The 4637 makes it safely past the siding of Dawes and will stop at Kelso to knock down the retainers set at Cima. The Kelso dunes cover roughly 40 square miles and are easily seen from the western flank of the Cima grade. An eastbound empty coal train puts both the dunes and the depot in the rearview mirror as it makes an evening run up the hill. UP 6321 is a former SP AC 4400 number 277. The engineer shows off its alternating ditch lights, something UP locomotives don't normally come with. A westbound stack train waits in the 9,025-foot siding. With the empty coal train clear of the west switch, the dispatcher in Omaha lines the UP 8046 west onto the main. CSX 3394 and ET44AH earns its keep on a West Coast trip between Chicago and Long Beach. The Providence Mountains reflect the crimson light of the dying sun as another day of rail fanning draws to a close. The Cedar Canyon Road crosses the main line just west of Chase, the last siding west of Cima. The control point at milepost 249.8 shows a flashing yellow for UP 8228 East, as the stack train crawls up the final leg of the heavy climb in Run 8. The trailing EMD SD70M coughs up black smoke in intervals, indicating possible problems with its turbocharger, sometimes referred to as turbo burp. It is undoubtedly affecting the train's performance. The two trailing diesels are hopefully bound for a paint booth in the near future, the victims of vandalism which seems to be going unchecked in North America. UP 2616, a GE C45AH as designated by the UP, assists the train over the top of Cima Hill by remote control. From Chase, the railroad heads mainly due north until reaching the summit at Cima. Nearing the 4,000-foot level, the desert begins to take on a different look, with Joshua trees, cholla, and yucca covering the hillside on either side of the tracks. Add rich evening light to the mix, and even an eastbound bear table makes for an interesting subject. Crossing over to the west side of the tracks, UP 5923 is working hard to bring even more bare tables to the top of Cima Hill. The repo train met UP 8219 west at Cima, and the Chicago to LA stack train now eases down the west side. Trains crest the summit of Cima Hill at an elevation of 4,207 feet above sea level. Our Beartable train is in the hole for a second westbound, which will follow the stack train down the mountain. Looking to the south, the stack train is just a thin line below the Providence Mountains. UP 5430, with a North Platte to West Colton manifest in tow, begins a 19-mile, 2.2% descent to Kelso. Two big GEs are cut in as remote-controlled swing helpers and will add dynamic braking to the heavy westbound. Nearing Kelso, the stacked train led by UP 8219 catches the glint of the evening sun far away in the vastness of the desert. UP 7681 East drags a manifest over Cima Hill, complete with auto racks, covered hoppers, and lumber from Oregon. The rails cut through the 1.6 million acre Mojave National Preserve, which was established in 1994 by an act of Congress. One doesn't have to wander far from the tracks to find a nice desert setting like this. Among the yucca and Joshua trees, a Mojave mound cactus has just begun to bloom, a sign that spring is here. Closer to the tracks, a sign of a different kind warns westbounds that the steep downgrade is dead ahead. The summit is an almost unassuming place. A sign along the Kelso-Cima Road invites passers-by to stop and look at the defunct Cima store. Old buildings, some of which were once rail cars, sit in the weeds across from the summit siding. This was once rangeland that benefited from the railroad, as ranchers had an easy way to get cattle to market. During the steam days, helpers were turned on a Y-track before returning to Kelso. The west leg is now severed from the north siding. There are two siding tracks at Cima. The north track measures 6,266 feet in length, and the south track is 9,862 feet long. UP 8046 West is seen again as it passes the east control point at C255. UP 8583 West passes a forest of Joshua trees as it approaches Cima. Although the 1% grade isn't as steep as the west side, the big diesel still put on a great show. Impressive Joshua tree forests cover the higher elevations. The nearby Cima Dome and Shadow Valley forests are the largest in the world. Native to the area and part of the yucca family, the Spanish referred to it as the desert dagger. The contemporary name came from Mormon settlers in the mid-19th century. The tree's unique shape reminded them of the biblical account of Joshua, who led Israel to the Promised Land, reaching his hands to the sky in prayer. The sun sets on another day, and the desert soon fills with the sounds of the night. The next morning, we continue our journey down the east side of Cima Hill. The railroad skirts the edge of the Ivanpah Valley on the western flank of the New York Mountains. After dropping through Joshua and Brant, trains arrive at the siding of Ivanpah near milepost 266. Across the valley, a massive solar array is hard to miss at the base of the Clark Mountain Range. Farther to the east, one can make out the town of Primm, located right on the Nevada state line. A closer inspection reveals the remains of buildings from the early days of the railroad. An abandoned house still had furniture, books, and magazines left by its last occupants. A house track nestles up against the loading dock, which occasionally is used by maintenance of way. The lone unit, UP 8393, has been sidelined here for several days, the victim of a traction motor fire. One can see for miles in the open country. We detect some motion near the base of the mountains beyond Nipton. A stack train has just crossed the border into California and is heading west. Although the maximum track speed through here is 70, it will take more than 35 minutes for it to reach us. The train is now no more than 10 miles away as it rumbles through the small community of Nipton. Still farther behind it, another westbound, a manifest, crosses the state line near Caleta, Nevada, 20 miles away. UP 8219 West finally appears at Ivanpah with an arrow wedge stack train of domestic containers. After passing through more, we arrive at Nipton, the last community and siding in the state of California. Nipton dates back to 1905 with the coming of the railroad. This was a cattle loading station for several ranches in addition to a supply center for many local mines. A few wooden rail cars have survived in town and are still used to this day, adding to the flavor of the community. Out in the desert, a few fence corners remain from the days when cattle roamed this country, while in the distance, the large solar array looks like something out of a science fiction film. Nipton is a 9,835-foot siding with an old freight depot located near the tracks. More coal loads are headed toward Yermo, and UP 7270 leads the charge up the east side of Cima Hill. The westbound grade is around 1% as a coal train slowly lugs its way to the summit. The grade lessens as we head toward the Nevada state line. UP 8046 West races through the desert between Platte and Nipton. If you've been wondering about the huge solar array in the distance, it is the Ivanpah Solar Facility, which went online in 2014. The largest of its kind in the world, over 173,000 movable solar mirrors focus the sun's energy on boilers located in the tall collector towers seen here. They are used to power steam turbines connected to power generators with a combined gross capacity of 392 megawatts. Underexposing the image allows us to see the very bright section of the boiler tower. Near the center of the array, the temperature can reach over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It has been known to cook birds in mid-air, and sectional air charts warn pilots of ocular glare when flying in the area. With the glare of the afternoon sun overhead, the eastbound ZLADV glides down grade near the Nevada state line at Platte. The railroad continues to follow the Ivanpah Valley in a northerly direction, passing the sidings of Borax and Jean. Eastbounds face another 1% uphill grade to Erie before dropping down into Las Vegas. The 41 local out of Vegas, powered by an EMD SD70M number 4470 running long hood forward, passes us on its way to Jean to do some work. The train works out of Arden Yard and switches industry at Sloan as well as Jean. The motels and casinos of Jean stand out in the desert to the south of Sin City, but in reality do not come close to the real Las Vegas. UP 7153 leads the eastbound CIG1 past milepost 305 as it climbs to the summit at Erie. The train originates in the City of Industry in California and is bound for the Global One intermodal facility in Chicago. A westbound ethanol train for West Colton Yard crosses over South Las Vegas Road just after sunrise. Near Erie, a colorful rock sculpture can be seen just east of the railroad titled The Seven Magic Mountains. It serves as a great landmark for another point of interest, the location where the last spike was driven on the LANSL on January 30th, 1905. UP 2649 leads an eastbound manifest past the historical marker at milepost 306.2. Just before sunrise, westbound UP 5884 leads train MSCWC through Erie. The train tops the grade and slowly picks up speed as it heads for Jean. Between Erie and Sloan, the track rolls through a series of cuts as the grade makes its final descent to Las Vegas. UP 8071 is on the point of a long stack train bound for Long Beach, California. UP 8914 waited patiently at Erie for the 8071 to clear. After passing under Interstate 15, the LA to Chicago stack train heads for a crew change at Las Vegas. Sloan is a site of a limestone quarry and cement plant, which is served by the railroad. A headlight on the mountain indicates an early morning train which has just departed Arden Yard on the outskirts of Las Vegas. This is the UP 5884 leading the Salt Lake City to West Colton manifest we saw earlier at Erie. It rounds the base of the mountain which is being quarried, passing a bypassed tunnel in the process. In the early morning, we arrive on the outskirts of Las Vegas. The bright golden South Point Hotel and Casino greets I-15 travelers from LA and serves to silhouette an eastbound bear table making its way into the city. The famous welcome sign dates back to 1959 and greets tourists at the south end of the Las Vegas Strip. We visited the Strip at 4 a.m. local time to catch some of the splendor of the city in its own lights. The town doesn't get up too early, and so we were able to sightsee while avoiding most of the traffic and crowds. After passing Arden Yard, the line goes back to double track as it makes its way through the city, more or less paralleling the Strip. Our final stop is Wyoming Avenue, milepost 332.7. Triple track running begins just east of the crossing through the station of Las Vegas, milepost 334.3, the eastern terminus of the Cima Subdivision. A fresh crew has just climbed aboard UP 5337, and the westbound ethanol tank train begins an early morning journey to Yermo over the historic route of the LA&SL. Since 1905, the Los Angeles and Salt Lake has proved to be an important line of commerce. Although it lacks the traffic it once enjoyed, it is still worth a visit when the call of lonely rails leads you into places less traveled. From city streets to barren deserts, from the depths of canyons to the crest of steep mountain grades, there's nothing like Union Pacific's Cima Sub. Until next time, thanks for watching.